Welcome back, everyone, to the weekly meditation challenge where we're going through Atisha's mind training slogans. This week we're on the 12th slogan, which is drive all blames into one. This is one that could easily be misinterpreted, I understand. But in the vein of patience, which is what a lot of these recent slogans are about, we're talking about giving others a break, essentially. Our mind is so quick to blame others. We have a sense of, oh, I've been wronged and it's someone else's fault. And we immediately go straight into, I don't like that person. I really like that person. I want to ignore that person. We just sort of loop into passion, aggression, ignorance pretty quickly. Here we're saying we're going to place that instinctual, perhaps better way of saying that would be habitual way of blaming others. And just notice where our suffering comes from. That's what we're talking about here. So the short form is when we actually realize that it's not other people that are causing us pain, it's us. We realize that what we should be blaming here is our egoistic mind, not other people. We're responsible for our suffering. It's actually a very important point. We are responsible for our suffering. Things might happen to us, things that are not fun at all. A loved one ends up in the hospital, someone breaks up with us, we lose our job. And these are things that cause us pain, but we're responsible for perpetuating suffering in our own head. That's what we're talking about here. So we could blame, oh, that boss is a real jerk for kicking me out. That partner is such a horrible human being for dumping me, whatever it might be. But it's us that's perpetuating suffering. So the Zen master, Thich Nhat Hanh, once said that a fun thing we could do in terms of looking at blame is to write 3 words in calligraphy and post them on the wall. And those 3 words are you sure? So you might sit there and say, oh, it's such a horrible human being that did this thing to me. And then we look up and it's literally saying, are you sure? Are you sure that they're horrible? Are you sure that they are responsible for your suffering? Or is it your own ego that thinks so solidly of itself that we think, oh, I'm the sort of person that should never be broken up with, fired, whatever it might be, whatever our particular version of pain might be. We think, oh, we're perfect, everyone else is sort of messed up. It's their fault. We blame elsewhere. Instead of saying, oh, maybe I can just look at my own ego, my own egoic mind. That's perpetuating my internal suffering. So, as hard as this may be to hear, you're the reason you are suffering. No one else is causing you to suffer. They might cause you pain, but we perpetuate it. We constantly generate all of the internal dialogue about how horrible that other human being is, what's going on with them, what a jerk they are, how we're always in the right. That's on us. So that's the bad news, that we are the reason for our suffering. The good news is that we are also the reason that we can wake up. We actually have everything we need internally to wake ourselves up. You're the only person that can cause yourself to become more awake. How do we do that? We drop the storyline. We drop perpetuating our suffering and we just feel whatever's coming up. Trala Rinpoche, in the reading for this week, in his book on the Lodro slogans, he said, because our perceptions are not always correct, it may not be a genuine reflection of what's taken place, we should always ask ourselves, maybe this isn't how things really are. It might just be my own biased egoistic mind projecting something onto the situation. And that's how blame arises, essentially. Through that basic process. Well, maybe it's not really how things are. In the same way that Thich Nhat Hanh says, are you sure? We just question, is it really someone else's fault? Do we really need to blame someone else? Or can we just look at our own, as Trala Rinpoche said, biased egoistic mind? Shogun Trungpa Rinpoche, in the readings for this week, he said, we could blame an infinite variety of things. And he actually has this beautiful list. We could blame the government, we could blame traffic, we could blame our parents, we go on and on. So he says, we could blame an infinite variety of things, but it is we who are not letting go, not developing enough warmth and sympathy. which makes us problematic. I'll read that again. We could blame an infinite variety of things, but it is we who are not letting go, not developing enough warmth and sympathy, which makes us problematic. Isn't that interesting? It's us. We perpetuate suffering, so we drive the blame into ourselves. But the flip side of this is the practice, and this week's challenge is when we notice that we are trying to perpetuate blame on someone else, we ask ourselves, are you sure? Are you sure that it's someone else's fault? But we don't beat ourselves up either. So it's two-sided. We notice when we're blaming, we drop that blame. But we don't beat ourselves up. We just look at our own egoic mind. We actually attempt to develop warmth and sympathy and let go of perpetuating our own suffering. So we're not laying any blame on anyone else, and we're also not beating ourselves up. It's both. That's the two-sided challenge this week. In the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva, Ngol Chutogme once famously said, should someone slander you throughout a billion worlds, with a heart full of love, to proclaim his good qualities in return is the practice of a bodhisattva. When blame arises and we notice that we want to blame someone else, or that we find that blame is being put on us, someone slandering us throughout a billion worlds, so to speak, we can actually attempt to go one step further. Not only blame someone else, not only not beat ourselves up, ideally, in the full sense of aspiring to be an open-hearted being, we would actually, with a heart full of love, just try to proclaim their own good qualities. Just try to think something that might be positive about that person that we might normally want to blame. So this is really 180 degrees different than what we might habitually do, but it's a wonderful experiment in terms of how we work with blame going forward.